All right, good to go this way.
All right, so I'll call the governance committee meeting on Wednesday, October 7th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. to order. I'll take roll call. Brian,
Present.
Tatiana,
Present.
Martha, not here. That's everyone. We have 3 out of the 4 members here. We'll move on to approving the agenda. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for Governance, Waukegan Public Library Governance Committee, Wednesday, October 7th, 2020.
I'll second.
So Tatiana motion to approve the agenda and Brian seconded. We have to do a roll call vote. Brian,
Yes.
Tatiana,
Aye.
and Josue, yes. That's approved. All right, so our agenda really doesn't have any action items today, more of discussions. And the first item is the expansion of the Homebound Delivery Program. This I put on the agenda because there was interest when I talked to the board about expanding our Homebound program to universally to everyone within the boundaries of Waukegan Public Library, and this would be similar to just like order and deliver service. So if you wanted a resource from the library that can be delivered, we would deliver it somehow. This is just preliminary talks because we don't have a plan in place, but this is where we wanted to start the discussion. I don't know if you want to say something, John, about what you think we can do or where we can head.
Absolutely. I wanted to, this is kind of the beginning of the conversation started with the possibility of expanding to create a delivery service that would be on demand and we could make deliveries to people's homes or to different wards. This is something we certainly did before and was very popular for the library in our community, the bookmobile. Previous manifestations of our bookmobile would arrive at school locations. And so it was a partnership essentially with the schools, and there were certain days and times. This is logistically something our library has done and can do again. It may require additional support in terms of staffing, but I think that this is something that we could do most certainly and relatively easily because we already have a library vehicle. Now, whether we add to that over the years, this is something that we most certainly want to make sure we're budgeting for because there will be expenses associated with this. But we're in the middle of budget discussions. The month of October is when we start our budget discussions in the library. It's an opportune moment to discuss budgeting for this in the next fiscal year.
Great, thank you. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering if there's any concerns about safety with people going into apartments, that kind of thing, or just homes. Obviously, people wouldn't be going inside homes, but in terms of being let into different apartment buildings and so on, I wonder about that, and if we would have specific hours or days of the week. Just kind of, John, I'd love to hear your ideas about that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Now, in terms of, this is something that we haven't ever done in terms of delivery to people's homes, aside from doing it with the Homebound. Our Homebound service currently requires someone to submit a doctor's note, proof that they have the need for the special service. So our Homebound numbers, I can't tell you, maybe about 30 people who take advantage of the Homebound. This is something that, yes, being let into apartment buildings, I believe that would probably be best served if we pick spots, like I think maybe partnering with the Parks Department to park in a parking lot that's lit, and or possibly with some of the buildings that are staffed. I don't know what that looks like at the present moment, but it's certainly something logistically we can figure out. Whether it's we pull up into each ward at a certain date and time, and that's what people would know when the library, the bookmobile was going to be at their school, and so they would show up. And also it was in cooperation with the schools too, so the students had access to materials in the library's bookmobile. Primarily the bookmobile service was for children.
Josue, are you thinking right now this would be in place of like curbside pickup, or in addition to curbside pickup, or would this be more of a browsing service?
I mean, this is a conversation we can have within this committee and other trustees, but the idea is to have this be in place not just during the pandemic, but always, and just have universal ordering and then delivery.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be. I mean, if you're ordering, I mean, I think you can still be curbside if you prefer to pick it up at the library yourself and have it delivered. I think that can.
But you're envisioning something where patrons can put materials on hold and select getting them delivered to their home, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
The idea behind this is that you know, we have this idea at the library of expanding access to all of our community, and obviously we live in a low-income community, a community where a lot of parents work, you know, often 2 jobs, or don't have a vehicle to get to the library, or just children who don't have, you know, parents who can take or get to the library. So this would, you know, make our resources available to almost anybody in Waukegan, whether you can get to the library or not.
I love the idea. Do we know of any other libraries that are offering something like this?
I have not begun to research, but I certainly will, and I'll report back. I believe, as Josue mentioned, it would be wise to expand our service to include this as an option, because transportation certainly is a challenge for people in Waukegan. We have a great bus system, don't get me wrong, but we certainly have, you know, this is one of the only libraries I've ever worked for that there aren't a lot of kids right after school, because we're about a mile's walk from any school. It's a walk for most kids, and so to be able to deliver service to wards or to different, you know, even to people's homes, I think logistically that would be a lot more complicated, but it's certainly doable based on a schedule.
How does that kind of thing work with insurance? What, like, I don't know, insurance-wise, would we need to add to our insurance policy for something like this if we have multiple drivers?
That is something I don't know the answer to yet, but I will find out.
Yeah, I imagine that it would require some type of safety driving training, things like that.
Okay.
Looking at whatever insurance policies we do have, because you would need to have your drivers covered under that. But training would have to be done for sure.
And okay, that's great. I really like this idea a lot.
Those are great points and questions, Tatiana. I think this is why we brought it to this committee, because, you know, we want to think about, you know, the stuff we want to include in a policy in the future and what we have to look into and budget for. Obviously, I think we're going to have to budget for a new vehicle soon. I know I've seen it in previous budgets that the van is not as reliable as it was a few years ago.
Right.
So if we're gonna expand this program to include everyone in Waukegan, I think maybe eventually buy a new vehicle that can be used for other things, including this program.
I really love the idea. I really, really love this idea. So.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the benefit will go to youth, because a lot of our youth in the city know how to use Amazon and how to order things from Amazon or, you know, other retailers online. So I don't think that will be much of an issue. I think the bigger issue is, you know, what you brought up. How do we deliver to apartments when you have to go inside? Another idea is to maybe if a kid orders from and they're at a local school, we can deliver it to their school and they get it at school. So
yeah, I feel like if Uber can do it and Grubhub and all these different places can deliver food safely to people's houses, I think we should be able to deliver books safely. So materials.
I agree. And if Amazon can deliver something the next day, I think we can do it even better and deliver day of.
Yeah, I would love it. I would absolutely love it.
Does anyone else have any other things to talk about before? I think the idea is to move forward with this, come up with a proposal and policy that we can discuss in the next few months and have in place, I don't know, sometime next year. John, do you agree?
I believe that's doable. I think in the new calendar year, we set our intentions with expanding our service further to, you know, we're not, again, open to the public, you know, same number of hours we were open, but we are expanding our services and doing it in a different way. I think that's doable.
And I love the idea of launching something like that in the cold months. You know, I really think it would be fantastic for people over the winter.
Yeah, that would be great if we could have it in the winter months. I think to roll it out during the times when no one wants to be outside would be a good idea.
Yep.
So moving forward, John, do you think you can maybe explore how we can present this through a policy, and also what implications this comes with, like what expenses we'll need staff wise or supplies.
I can certainly work on a proposal that would help lay out some of the outlays, so to speak, costs involved.
Great, thank you. And that was a great first discussion about it. I think we can move forward with it. Does anyone else have any last comments?
No, I also just agree that it's a really good idea. So.
All right, next on the agenda is the development of a collection loan policy. John, do you want to give an update of where we're at with that?
Yes, and if I may, I'm going to share my screen so you can see our current policy review schedule that has, as recently as January 2020, been updated. Any new policies of harassment-free workplaces, obviously the date is not changed on here, but we recently came up with sexual harassment policy, so that'll need to be added. I think in addition to the fines and fees policy, which has changed. So this is an example of the timeline of all the different policies that are on our books, including the use of the library, this collection development policy, et cetera. All these are different pieces of our policy puzzle. And in order for us to move forward with a collection loan policy, for example, I think it would be wise we've had a few of Ray Bradbury's material items during his birthday celebration go to be borrowed on the honor system by some local organizations. And considering that donation was made to the library to be shared with our community, it's wise to consider a proper agreement, which I'm certain we need to consult with Douglas as well to make sure that what we're doing isn't going to put us in a liable state. But in terms of just as so simple as the typewriter, knowing that the people who borrowed it, that we were guaranteed more than just the honor system, that something that we loan out to someone in the community is going to be returned in the same condition and being properly insured, especially when it's something like Ray Bradbury's typewriter or part of his collection. So the discussion was had last governance committee meeting of developing a collection loan policy to support not a permanent loan, but a long-term loan with the Parks Department as they are seeking grants for redevelopment of the new Bradbury Museum that will be at the corner of Sheridan and Washington, the old Carnegie building. So I think in order to do this, we need to know, of course, we have the intention of making these things accessible to the community that we serve and not just keeping them in the dusty storage bin. But I believe a good place to begin would be the creation of a collection loan policy. So if we wanted to put not just part of the Bradbury collection, for example, but if we had a collection that we could loan out to a local hospital, that we could keep remote locations going in that way to expand where people can find and access library materials. That's why we would like to consider a collection loan policy. That also gives us the ability to protect the library's interests in the collection that is priceless, so to speak. So that's kind of the foundation of the development of a collection loan. We've got the Bradbury collection back in 2015. Our former executive director, Richard Lee, had U-hauled a bunch of materials that were Ray Bradbury's personal collection from California to Waukegan, Illinois. And we are working through them. It will take a long time to properly process and make sure we have an accurate record of everything that's in that collection. But if we ever decide or are able to loan out materials to organizations like the Parks Department on a long-term basis, we should have a collection loan policy in place.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. When do you think we'll have a draft of a loan policy to look at?
I can, again, with discussions, I think Brian and I talked about earlier having a conversation with Ty at the Parks Department and bringing in a few other people. So finding out what that needs to entail, I can probably provide a draft within this month or next.
I have two questions. The first being, do we have tabs on stuff that's lent out right now? Do we know like how much of the collection is currently outside of being loaned out?
Yes, it's all currently here on location at the library.
It is, okay.
In
And
climate-controlled
secondly,
storage.
perfect. And then second, I'm not sure if, Brian, this is a question for you, but if we're looking forward to loaning the collection out to the Park District, is it possible to have people from the Historical Society come partner with the library to go through the collection and do all the things John was saying need to be done? I don't know if that's a question for John or Brian.
I can try to answer it in terms of like wearing my Historical Society Park District hat. That would be I think it'd be a pretty colossal task just to have like volunteers working on it, even just having like a full-time person working on it. So like as John mentioned, like the collection's been with the library for 5 years now, and it's still not been sifted through, right, to see exactly everything that's in there. And so I think there's a lot of different layers to this, because I know conversations had taken place in the past when Selena was still executive director with the Historical Society. So there was a different understanding as to where the direction of that collection was going to go. And so I know, as John mentioned, we still plan on meeting with Ty and Josh Bill, who's the president of the Historical Society, because I know that the intent is to have them, the Historical Society, drop a memorandum of understanding. Since right now there is no loan policy, but as John mentioned, there's grants that the Park District / Historical Society are trying to put through in partnership with the public library. I think a memorandum of understanding could work in place of a loan agreement, assuming like that the wording and language would be the same. So that's kind of where we are right now in terms of trying to figure this out.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the update, John. I think that we can close the discussion and continue it when we see a draft, unless there's something else someone wants to say. Nope. All right.
You muted yourself.
That's the end of the discussion items on the agenda. We'll be working on updating the policies that are on the schedule that John just shared with us. John, if you can share that with the rest of the committee, that'd be useful. And then we'll discuss those policies that we currently have in place that need updating and revision in the future.
It needs to be revised. Obviously, there have been some changes since it was created. So since we most recently updated in January. So we'll make sure those are accurate, and we'll send out to the governance committee ASAP.
Great, thank you.
Does someone want to motion to adjourn? Oh, and there was no public comment submitted.
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
There is a motion to adjourn by Brian and second from Tatiana. Roll call. Brian?
Yes.
Tatiana?
Yes.
Josue, yes. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Everyone have a good week. Enjoy the beautiful weather.